Hey folks, before the video starts, please leave a like and subscribe to cheer me up. Make sure you are relaxed and enjoy today's stories. I worked as Tinder support on the dark web until I realized I was helping people match with victims. I swear I wasn't looking for anything shady when this all started. It was one of those moments where life sneaks up on you, and suddenly you realize your credit card balance is maxed, rent is overdue, and your student loans are gnawing at you like a parasite. So when I saw a freelance gig offering $35 an hour for remote work, I figured, why not? The job ad was simple, almost too simple. Customer support for a dating app, it said. Remote, flexible hours, no experience necessary. All I had to do was manage incoming support tickets and help users troubleshoot. Honestly, it sounded like a dream gig. I'd done call center work before, and this seemed like the same thing, only online. I figured it was for some small underground dating app trying to get traction. I mean, with Tinder, Bumble, and all those giants out there, I figured smaller apps must need help, right? Here's the thing though, they didn't interview me the way you'd expect. No Zoom calls or email chains, just a weird chat-only client called Hydra that I had to download. Something about it felt off, but desperation makes you ignore your instincts sometimes. The person on the other end, a guy named Reed, was short and to the point. No formalities, no tell me about yourself. Just, do you have reliable Wi-Fi? And can you start tonight? The first weird thing happened right away. Reed never told me the company's name. When I asked, he dodged the question and just said, it's a niche platform. Not a good answer, but hey, niche dating apps exist, right? So I shrugged it off. Within an hour, I had access to their backend system. It didn't look too different from any other customer support portal. Just a list of incoming tickets with user complaints and requests. Password resets, profile issues, account suspensions, the usual stuff. But there were a few things that stood out almost immediately. First, all the usernames were weird. None of them sounded real. They were things like Ghost 849, Oblivion 77, and Hunter 619. Not exactly the kind of usernames you'd expect on a dating app, and there were no profile pictures either. I figured maybe they were trying to be anonymous or edgy, like those apps for people who wanted discreet encounters or whatever. Still, it was weird. The second thing that stuck out, there was no swipe system, no liking or matching like you see on Tinder or Bumble. Instead, users sent direct match requests, almost like booking a reservation. They'd type the name of someone they wanted to connect with, and it was up to me to approve or deny the match. That was my job. Just make sure the users looked legit and approve their requests. Easy money, right? At first, the tickets were harmless. Things like, can't log in, keep saying my password is wrong. How do I update my profile info? That kind of stuff. I'd copy-paste some generic troubleshooting tips, mark the ticket as resolved, and move on. No big deal. The first few shifts were boring, honestly. I kept Netflix on in the background while answering tickets, and the hours flew by. For $35 an hour, I wasn't complaining. But then, on my third shift, things started to get weird. It was around 11:30 p.m., and most of the tickets were routine until one caught my attention. The subject line read, Urgent, match request approval, user ID 1432. That wasn't the weird part. What made me pause was the attached note. Priority fulfillment required. Do not delay. That was new. I checked the user profiles involved in the match request. One of them was the same generic no picture, no biotype, Hunter 619. The other user, however, had a short bio that just said, "This is my last try. I need this to work." I didn't know what that meant, but something about it gave me the creeps. There was also a weird icon next to their name, a little red triangle I hadn't seen before. I hovered my mouse over it, and a tooltip popped up. Auto bidder in progress. User flagged for priority. Auto bidder. I had no idea what that was supposed to mean, and there was nothing in the onboarding guide about it. So I messaged Reed to ask. He responded almost instantly. "Just approve it. Don't worry about the details." Okay, that rubbed me the wrong way, but I didn't push back. The job was easy, the pay was good, and I wasn't about to get fired over one weird ticket. So I clicked approve. As soon as I did, the request vanished. Not just from my queue, the whole thing disappeared like it never existed. The user profiles were gone too, wiped from the system without a trace. I figured maybe it was just some glitch or a back-end refresh, but something about it felt deliberate, and that's when things got even stranger. Around 1 a.m., another ticket came in. This time, it wasn't a request. It was a completion notice. Match fulfilled. User, Hunter 619. Fulfillment order complete. Fulfillment. That wasn't a word I'd seen in any of the training materials. I messaged Reed again, asking if something had changed in the process. He replied with just 3 words. Just log it. At this point, I was feeling uneasy, but whatever. If they wanted me to mark it as complete, that's what I'd do. I clicked log match, and just like before, the ticket vanished from the system. Curiosity was gnawing at me though. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. So I went digging through the system's menus, just to see if there was anything they hadn't told me about. And that's when I found the hidden queue. Buried deep under several layers of admin panels was a section labeled Pending Fulfillments. I hadn't noticed it before because it was locked behind an admin setting, but somehow I had access now, and what I found in that queue made my stomach twist into knots. There were dozens of requests, all marked as pending, and every single one of them followed the same pattern. User, some generic username, no picture, no bio. Status, awaiting fulfillment. But here's the thing, when I clicked on one of the pending profiles, there was a photo attached. Not a profile picture, something much worse. It was a grainy, low-quality photo from what looked like a security camera. The timestamp was from earlier that night. And the person in the photo, they were walking alone down a street. The realization hit me all at once, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a dating app. I was helping people find their targets, and I just approved one. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat there in front of my laptop, the cursor blinking on the Hydra client, trying to make sense of what I'd just found. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty, and my gut twisted in knots. This wasn't just some glitchy back-end issue. Something way darker was going on. I thought about logging off, pretending I never saw anything, but there was a little voice in my head whispering, "What if you've already done something you can't take back?" And honestly, that voice wouldn't shut up. I had to know more. So I went back into the system. I didn't even care if they caught me this time. I figured I'd at least try to understand what the hell I was involved in before I made a decision. Maybe there was a chance I was just overthinking all this. Right. The hidden pending fulfillments queue still had dozens of requests sitting there, waiting for someone to approve them. They all followed the same formula: basic usernames with no real info, weird photos attached that felt too much like surveillance footage, and timestamps from earlier that same day. I clicked on a random one: user Silent Fox 32, timestamp 8:47 p.m. And sure enough, there was another grainy security camera shot, this time of a woman in a convenience store, wearing headphones and browsing the candy aisle. She looked so normal, just someone out doing something mundane. There was nothing weird about the photo itself, except for the fact that it was here, in this system, attached to a match request. That's when I noticed something else that made my skin crawl. Underneath the image, there was a note: client bid, $1,300, delivery by October 14th. Client bid, delivery? What the hell kind of dating app was this? I scrolled further down and saw even more unsettling information: addresses, partial phone numbers, little notes like last seen, leaving work at 6 p.m. and often jogs at Riverside Park. It wasn't just random surveillance footage. These profiles were tracking people's movements, and I had been approving these requests like it was nothing, blindly clicking approve while real people were being hunted. It was too much. I needed answers, but I knew messaging Reed again would get me nowhere. He clearly didn't want me looking into this. But the thing about curiosity, it doesn't care. I kept digging. I remembered that some of the previous tickets I worked on had user IPs attached. Hydra didn't show much information about users, but if I could trace even one IP address, maybe I could figure out what these matches really were. I didn't know exactly what I was hoping to find. Maybe proof this was all some elaborate prank. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I copied an IP from one of the older requests I'd approved and pasted it into a tracing tool. It took a second, and then the results came back. Location: 42.4385 degrees north, 83.2824 degrees west. Status: residential address. I opened Google Maps and pasted in the coordinates. The pin dropped onto a quiet suburban neighborhood, one of those places with identical houses, neat little lawns, and 2-car garages. It looked normal, way too normal for whatever this was. And then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The house the pin landed on was dark. No lights on, no car in the driveway. It looked abandoned, empty. I kept zooming in, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw it. A small black van parked across the street, barely visible under a streetlight. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong there. And the worst part, the van's driver's side door was open. I slammed my laptop shut, adrenaline flooding my body. What the hell am I doing? I needed to talk to someone, anyone. But it was the middle of the night, and it wasn't like I could call the cops and say, "Hey, I think I accidentally helped someone kidnap a person from a fake Tinder app." I grabbed my phone, thinking maybe I'd text a friend to see if they were awake. But then, a new message popped up on Hydra. Stop now. No username, no timestamp, just those 2 words hanging there on my screen like a threat. My hand shook as I stared at the message. They knew. They were watching. I shut off my Wi-Fi, thinking maybe that would cut the connection, but the message stayed there, frozen on the screen. Hydra wouldn't close. And then another message appeared, this time longer. You think this is a game? Fulfill your shift, or you'll be next. My blood ran cold. I had no idea how they knew what I was doing, but it was clear now. I wasn't just working some harmless support gig. I was neck deep in something dangerous, and these people weren't going to let me just walk away. The next few minutes were a blur. I tried restarting my laptop, pulling out the battery, but nothing worked. Hydra kept popping back up the moment I logged in. It was like the app was embedded in my system. Every time I tried to quit, another message would appear. Finish your shift. Clock out properly. I didn't know what else to do, so I gave in. I opened the ticket queue, my heart pounding so hard, it felt like it was going to crack my ribs. There were still 6 more requests waiting to be approved. One by one, I opened them. Each request had a new photo attached, and every single one looked like it had been taken that same night. One was of a guy sitting at a bus stop, scrolling through his phone. Another was of a woman walking her dog, the leash glowing under a street lamp. And with every photo, the same note appeared underneath. Bid, $1,500. Delivery required within 24 hours. I couldn't do it. I couldn't click approve. My hand hovered over the mouse, my brain screaming at me to shut the laptop and run. But I knew they were watching. I knew if I didn't finish my shift, something terrible was going to happen. So I did it. I clicked approve 6 more times, feeling like I was sealing someone's fate with every click. And just like before, the requests disappeared the moment I marked them as fulfilled. When the last request vanished, my screen went black. Hydra finally closed on its own. For a second, I thought maybe it was over, but just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, a final message popped up. Good job. See you tomorrow. I slammed my laptop shut, my whole body trembling. I don't know how long I sat there, heart racing, trying to convince myself this wasn't real. But the truth was, it was. And now, I was part of it. I knew deep down they wouldn't just let me walk away. Not after everything I'd seen. And the worst part, tomorrow, I'd have to do it all over again. When I woke up the next morning, I half hoped everything was just a bad dream. But the second I cracked open my laptop, Hydra was already there, waiting for me. The icon sat in the corner of my screen, pulsating like a heartbeat. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, feeling a pit grow in my stomach. I knew if I clicked it, I'd see more tickets, more people to approve for matches. I kept telling myself it wasn't my fault. I didn't know what I was getting into, but that didn't matter anymore. I was in now. I finally gave in and opened Hydra. And just like I feared, the tickets were already piling up. But there was something different this time. There were fewer requests, only 4 in total, compared to the dozens I saw the night before. For a second, I thought maybe the nightmare was slowing down. But then I saw the subject lines. Request follow-up. Silent Fox 32. Status. Non-responsive. Request follow-up. Oblivion 77. Status. Non-responsive. I clicked the first one. It was the same profile I saw last night. The woman in the convenience store. Only now, there was a new image attached. She wasn't in the store anymore. The new photo showed her lying face down on the sidewalk, her phone shattered next to her. The timestamp was from 3:14 a.m., just hours after I had approved the request. Non-responsive. What the hell did that mean? I clicked the second follow-up request. This one was even worse. Oblivion 77, whoever that was, had been matched with a guy in one of those cheap windbreakers, the kind you'd buy at a gas station. The follow-up photo showed him sitting in the front seat of a car, slumped over, blood trailing from his temple. Delivery complete. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This wasn't a dating app. It was a goddamn hit list. The users weren't real. They were targets. And every time I clicked approve, I was signing off on someone's death. I knew I had to quit. Screw the money. I was done. But the moment I tried to close Hydra, a new message popped up, as if it had been waiting for me. Don't even think about it. Before I could react, my phone buzzed. I grabbed it off the desk, expecting some spam text, but it wasn't. It was a photo message. The picture showed my apartment building, the front entrance, taken from the street. I felt my blood run cold. Someone was watching me. I shut the curtains, my mind racing. My first thought was to run, get out of the apartment and never look back. But where would I go? Whoever these people were, they knew exactly where I lived. I couldn't go to the police either. How would I even explain this? Hi, officer. I accidentally got a job as support staff for a dark web hitman service. Yeah, right. Another message appeared on Hydra, interrupting my thoughts. Clock in. Finish today, or we come to you. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might explode. They weren't giving me a choice. I sat down, hands shaking, and opened the next request. This time, it was different. There was no profile, no name, just a blinking cursor where the username should have been. I waited, holding my breath as the system slowly loaded. And then, the request filled in. User, unknown, target, you. The photo attached was of me, sitting at my desk, taken just minutes ago. I jumped out of my chair, heart hammering in my chest. How? How were they doing this? I had all the curtains shut, the door locked. No one should have been able to see me. But the photo was there, clear as day. Same clothes, same position. Even the coffee mug I'd been holding was still on the desk in front of me. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. They weren't just watching me. They were inside. My phone buzzed again. Another message. I almost didn't want to look, but I forced myself to. It was another photo, this time of the building across the street. The picture was taken from a high angle, like someone was standing right at my window, looking down at the entrance. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the phone. I knew what they were saying, even if they didn't spell it out. Run, and we'll find you. Hide, and we'll still find you. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was a target. I sat frozen in my chair for what felt like hours, my mind spiraling in a million directions. I needed a way out, but every idea ended the same. They knew too much. They were already too close. Then it hit me. What if the only way out was to finish the shift? Maybe if I played along, I could buy myself some time. One last shift. That's all I had to get through. And after that, I'd figure out how to disappear. For good. I clicked back into Hydra, my hands still trembling, and reopened the queue. There was one final ticket waiting for me. Match request. Unknown. Clock out approval. The system was giving me a way out. If I completed this request, I'd be free. At least, that's what I hoped. I hovered the cursor over the approve button, every instinct in my body screaming at me to stop. But I didn't. I clicked it. As soon as I approved the request, the screen went black. I thought the laptop had crashed, but then a new message appeared. Just one line in plain text. You're done. For now. The Hydra client shut itself down, and the icon disappeared from my taskbar. It was like it had never been there at all. I sat there, stunned, my heart still racing. I didn't know what just happened, if I was safe, or if this was just the beginning of something worse. But then my phone buzzed one last time. Another message. This one wasn't from Hydra. It was from an unknown number. See you soon. The message, see you soon, was burned into my brain. No name, no follow-up. Just those 3 words hanging over me like a noose. I kept telling myself it was over, that they wouldn't come for me since I finished my shift. But every little noise in the apartment, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, felt like a signal, a countdown. I locked the door, latched the chain, and pushed a chair against the knob just in case. I even blocked the windows with blankets and shoved towels under the door to stop anyone from peeking in. It was ridiculous. I knew that. But rationality doesn't exactly work when you're being hunted. I stayed awake until the sun started creeping through the cracks in the blankets. My plan was simple. Survive long enough to disappear. I didn't care what it took. New identity, new city, fake social media accounts, whatever I had to do to get off their radar, I'd do it. I just needed a little more time to figure out my next move. By morning, my nerves were frayed, but I forced myself to act normal. Go about my day like nothing was wrong. If I panicked, they'd know. Hell, maybe they were already watching me somehow. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts, app notifications, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Not after the photos last night. I decided to leave the apartment, just for a while, to clear my head. Being trapped inside made me feel like a sitting duck, so I threw on a hoodie and headed out, keeping my head down as I walked to a nearby coffee shop. That's when I noticed something strange. The same black van from last night, the one parked across from the address I traced, was sitting at the end of my street. It looked exactly the same, with tinted windows and no license plate. The engine wasn't running. No one was in the driver's seat. I walked faster, resisting the urge to glance over my shoulder, but I could feel it. That sinking pit of your stomach feeling, like something terrible was just inches behind you, waiting for the right moment to pounce. I slipped into the coffee shop and ordered a drink, trying to act casual, but my brain was screaming, "They know. They're watching you." I sat at a corner table, clutching my cup with shaking hands, trying to come up with a plan. I figured I'd go back to the apartment, grab my essentials, and get the hell out of town. I didn't know where I'd go, just somewhere far away. Somewhere they wouldn't find me. Then, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but something told me I had to. With shaky hands, I unlocked the screen and saw another message from the unknown number. "Nice hoodie. You forgot your coffee." My stomach dropped. I was holding my coffee right now, but when I looked up, I saw what they meant. Someone had ordered the exact same drink as me, same size, same order, and it was sitting right at the pickup counter, untouched, like they knew exactly what I was going to order before I even walked in. I bolted out of the coffee shop without touching the other drink. Screw acting normal. I had to leave. Now. I ran the whole way back to my apartment, my heart pounding in my ears. But when I turned the corner to my street, I froze. The black van was gone. For a second, I felt a flicker of relief. But that relief shattered the moment I stepped through my front door. The chair I'd wedged against the knob was still in place, and the chain lock was still latched. But something was off. All my windows were open, not just unlocked, wide open, letting the cold breeze flow through my apartment. The blankets I'd hung were gone, tossed on the floor like someone had gotten tired of them. And there, sitting neatly on my kitchen counter, was my untouched coffee order. My legs felt like jelly. They had been inside. Somehow, they'd gotten in without tripping the chain or moving the chair. They hadn't stolen anything, hadn't trashed the place. They just opened the windows and left me my coffee, a message. I stumbled into the kitchen, my breathing ragged. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, anyone. But before I could, Hydra opened itself on my laptop. Again, I didn't touch anything. I swear to God, the app opened on its own. A new message popped up on the screen, as if someone was waiting for me to come home. Running won't help. Clock in. I slammed the laptop shut, panic overtaking me. This wasn't just a threat anymore. They were proving something. They had access to everything. They could find me wherever I went, no matter how far I ran. And if I didn't keep playing along, well, I wasn't sure how long I had left. I sat on the floor, back against the fridge, trying not to hyperventilate. My phone buzzed again, and this time, I didn't even have to look. I knew what the message would say before I read it. Open your laptop. Last shift I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But what choice did I have? They were everywhere. In my apartment, on my street, in my phone. And the worst part? They weren't even hiding anymore. They were just waiting for me to comply. With shaking hands, I opened the laptop. Hydra launched immediately, bringing up a new queue. This time, there was only one ticket. Final fulfillment request. Match pending. I clicked it, my stomach twisting into knots. There was no username, no target photo, just a live camera feed of me. Sitting at my kitchen counter, holding my phone, I stared at the feed, paralyzed, as another message appeared on the screen. Approve the match, or someone else will. I hovered the cursor over the approve button, my mind spinning. If I clicked it, I was signing off on myself. But if I didn't, well, I didn't want to know what the alternative was. My finger trembled over the mouse. Every instinct in my body screamed to shut the laptop, throw it out the window, and run. But I knew there was no running from this. Not anymore. With a deep breath, I clicked approve. The screen went black. No more feeds, no more messages, just the sound of my own shallow breathing, filling the silence. Then, one final message appeared. See you soon. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the black screen of my laptop. The words, see you soon, hung heavy in the room, like cigarette smoke that wouldn't clear. I couldn't tell if I was breathing or just suffocating slowly. My hands felt numb, the room too quiet, and the only sound was the slow hum of the refrigerator. Every instinct told me to get out, to run. But where the hell would I go? The windows were still wide open, the chair still jammed under the doorknob. But it didn't matter. They had already been inside once. I thought it was over. I thought clicking approve was the end of it, that maybe they'd leave me alone now. But the silence was worse than any message they'd sent. The waiting was unbearable. It felt like the whole world had frozen around me, like something was coming, and I wouldn't know until it was too late. Then, without warning, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a notification from my building's security camera app. New activity detected at front entrance. 10:47 p.m. My breath caught in my throat. I opened the app with shaky fingers, the screen loading slower than usual. Just enough time for panic to dig its claws deeper. When the video finally played, the feed showed the lobby of my apartment building. The automatic doors slid open and a man stepped inside. He wore a black hoodie with the hood pulled low, hiding most of his face. He kept his head down, moving with an eerie calmness, like he knew exactly where he was going. He didn't even glance towards the security camera. In his hand was a phone, and I swear, I could feel it. He was watching me through that screen. I bolted up from the floor, heart racing, and grabbed my backpack. I stuffed in whatever I could, wallet, charger, spare clothes, anything within reach. I wasn't waiting around for him to knock on my door. I moved toward the window, thinking I could climb down the fire escape. But just as I reached for the latch, my phone buzzed again. Don't bother. Too late. I dropped the phone. My head was spinning. How did they know? It was like they were watching me in real time. Then I heard it. A faint knock. Not at the door. At my window. I froze. My whole body locked in place, muscles tensing as my brain tried to process what was happening. I was on the 3rd floor. There was no balcony, no ledge, just a sheer drop to the street below. And yet, someone, or something, was on the other side of the glass. I didn't dare move. I couldn't bring myself to look. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw the shadow shift. A shape leaned closer to the window, pressing a pale hand against the glass. The hand was wrong, too long, the fingers stretched just a little too far. Then a second knock, deliberate, slow. And with that knock came another message on Hydra. Open the window. Welcome your match. I backed away slowly, heart hammering against my ribs, every inch of my body screaming to get out. I didn't care where, just away from this nightmare. But as I moved toward the door, the knob rattled. Someone was trying to get in from the hallway. The chain lock stretched, creaking under the pressure. They were already here, both outside the window and at my front door. I was trapped. My laptop screen flickered back on, and another message appeared in Hydra. You can't run from this. It's already done. I stared at the message, mind reeling. They had planned this from the beginning. There was never a way out. Not really. Every match I approved, every shift I finished, it was all leading to this moment. And I'd walked right into their trap. The door rattled harder, and the chain scraped against the latch. Whoever, or whatever, was on the other side wasn't in a hurry. They knew I had nowhere to go. Then came the 3rd knock at the window. This time, the glass cracked under the pressure. A thin web of fractures spread across the surface, splintering outward from where the hand pressed. I knew I had to move. Now I grabbed my laptop, not even sure why. Maybe out of instinct, or maybe because it felt like the only lifeline I had left. I opened Hydra one last time, hoping for something, anything that could get me out of this. A new message popped up immediately. Fulfillment complete. Thank you for your service. Then a photo appeared. It was me, taken just seconds ago. I was sitting exactly where I was now, frozen in front of the laptop. But in the photo, I wasn't alone. There was a figure standing right behind me. A man in a black hoodie, with a face that didn't look human. His eyes were wide, empty pits, devoid of anything remotely alive. His mouth was stretched into a grin far too wide for his face, as if someone had taken a knife and carved it open. And his hand was on my shoulder. I didn't even feel him until that moment. The cold pressure of his fingers digging into my skin. My breath hitched in my throat. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My limbs felt heavy, like I was sinking underwater. The last thing I saw before everything went black was a final message on the screen. You've been matched. And then, nothing. I woke up to the sound of distant sirens. My apartment was silent. No rattling door, no cracked window, just emptiness. The laptop was gone. So was my phone. There was no trace of Hydra, no messages, nothing. It was like none of it had ever happened. But deep down, I knew better. They didn't need the app anymore, because now they had me. And the worst part, I think, I'm someone else's next match. I found a dark web video of my own funeral. It's scheduled for tomorrow. Alright, I know this sounds insane, but hear me out. I've always been one of those people who gets a bit too curious. You know the type. Late night YouTube rabbit holes, binge watching conspiracy videos, the whole top 10 creepiest unsolved mysteries playlist at 3 a.m. kind of deal. It's harmless fun, right? Well, I thought so too, until a couple nights ago. It started when a friend of mine, Zach, mentioned he had found a way onto the deep web. Now, I'd always heard stories about the dark web, scary stuff, like hitman services and red rooms, but I'd never actually seen it. I figured most of it was just urban legend hype. But Zach was that one friend who always had to take things to the next level. So, naturally, when he asked if I wanted to check it out, I was intrigued. Dumb, I know, but he made it sound so easy. Come on, dude, he said over Discord. It's not as bad as everyone says. Just use a VPN, some Tor browser magic, and boom, you're in. It's not all illegal crap either. You can find weird stuff, like experimental videos, chat rooms, lost websites. It's wild. Looking back now, I should have said no. But, like I said, I'm curious to a fault. The idea of seeing something hidden, something not meant for me, that was enough to reel me in. So that night, I downloaded everything I needed. A VPN, the Tor browser, all that. I even watched a quick YouTube tutorial so I wouldn't completely screw myself. And after triple checking my setup, I was in. At first, it was underwhelming. I expected some dark, sinister underworld, but most of it just looked like a busted Craigslist. Outdated forums, empty chat rooms, a few suspiciously named links that I didn't dare click. Nothing exciting, really. Until I found a link labeled, "See Yourself." It was just sitting there, on one of those weird message boards, in the middle of a thread about predictive data. The title was vague. See Yourself, but it stood out among the other random garbage posts. There were no comments, no replies, just the link. Against my better judgment, I clicked. It took me to a site with nothing but a single video. There wasn't even a title, just a black screen with a play button. Below the video was a small message in red text that said, "Do not share this. Do not look away." Now, this should have been my cue to nope out of there. But curiosity, you know? I figured it was some edgy viral video, like one of those creepy ARGs or something. Something designed to scare idiots like me. I mean, it had to be, right? I hit play. The video started off grainy, like it had been recorded on some old VHS tape. For a few seconds, it was just static and weird. Distorted audio, high-pitched hums, random clicks, the kind of noise that makes your skin crawl for no reason. And then the screen flickered, and I saw myself. I'm not kidding. It was me. Same brown hoodie, same messy hair, sitting in my room. The same exact room I was sitting in at that moment. The camera was positioned from the corner of the room, like it had been hidden up there for months without me knowing. And the worst part? I was sitting there at my desk, looking at my computer screen, just like I was doing right then. I stared at the screen, frozen. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an old video, some weird glitch or pre-recorded prank. Maybe it was just someone who looked like me, sitting in a room that happened to look like mine. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. It was too perfect. The angle, the lighting, even the flicker of my lamp. Everything was identical to right now. Then the camera in the video zoomed in slowly, focusing on my face. And here's the thing. The me in the video wasn't looking at the computer anymore. He was looking directly at the camera, at me. I felt my heart start pounding. I checked the corners of my room, spinning my chair in panic, looking for a camera or anything that could explain this. But there was nothing. Just my old posters, dirty laundry, the same cluttered desk as always. No camera, no prank. Just me, watching me. And then, the me in the video smiled. Not a friendly smile either. It was that kind of unsettling grin you see in nightmares. Too wide, too knowing, like he knew something I didn't. The screen flickered again. For a second, the video cut to black, and when it came back on, the room was empty. But the video wasn't over. The camera panned across the room, as if it was searching for something. It settled on the closet door. My closet door. The same closet door that was behind me, just a few feet away. And that's when I noticed something I swear wasn't there before. The closet door in the video, it was open, just a crack, and there was something standing inside. It was too dark to see their face, but I could make out the shape of a person. They were standing perfectly still, like they were waiting for something. Watching, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. My closet door, in real life, was closed, completely shut. But suddenly, I had the overwhelming urge to check it. And then, the video skipped again. This time, it cut to a completely different scene. A funeral. I could see a casket, draped in black cloth, surrounded by mourners. They were all dressed in black, their faces blurred, like someone had deliberately edited the footage to hide their identities. I squinted at the screen, trying to figure out where this was. It looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. And then the camera zoomed in on the casket, and I saw the nameplate. My name. There was no mistaking it. My full name, etched into the metal plate. The funeral was for me. I felt my stomach drop. This had to be a joke. Some kind of elaborate prank, right? I mean, Zach had a twisted sense of humor, but this was different. This was too real. Then, as if to twist the knife even further, the camera panned to a small digital clock resting next to the casket. The time on it read 12 p.m., and below the time was tomorrow's date. I slammed my laptop shut so fast, I nearly knocked over my coffee. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the closed laptop, trying to convince myself that what I'd just seen wasn't real. But the fear wouldn't go away. Tomorrow. The funeral was scheduled for tomorrow. And the worst part? It was already after midnight. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the video play in my mind. The grin on that other version of me. The dark figure standing in my closet. The casket with my name on it. And that date. Tomorrow. By the time the sun came up, I had convinced myself it was all some elaborate trick. I mean, it had to be, right? Someone hacked my webcam, or maybe deep-faked me into that footage. It's not like there aren't a million tutorials out there teaching people how to do that stuff. Hell, I'd seen crazier things go viral before. Still, something felt off. Pranks don't leave you with that gnawing feeling of dread in the pit of your stomach. They don't make you feel like the walls are closing in, or like every sound in your house is someone creeping just out of sight. When I got up, I went straight to my closet. My hand hovered over the handle, my heart thumping in my chest. It was stupid. I knew it was just my clothes in there, but I couldn't shake the fear. What if the figure from the video was inside? What if they were waiting for me? I yanked the door open, empty. Just my usual mess. Old shoes, a pile of laundry, and that broken guitar amp I never got around to fixing. I let out a shaky breath and laughed at myself. See? Just clothes, you idiot. But as I turned to leave the room, I noticed something strange. The door hinge made this soft squeak as it swung closed. I've lived here for years, and that hinge had never made a sound before. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. The door wasn't used to being opened. The fear came rushing back. My skin prickled, and I suddenly felt very exposed, like I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I forced myself to leave, slamming the door shut behind me, trying to shake off the paranoia. I told myself it was just my nerves playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The day crawled by in a blur. I tried texting Zach to see if he was behind this somehow, but he wasn't answering. All I got was one read receipt around 9 a.m. No reply, no follow-up, just silence. I kept checking my phone obsessively, waiting for some kind of confirmation that this whole thing was just a bad joke, but nothing came. I started scrolling through Reddit, Twitter, anything to distract myself, but I couldn't focus. My brain kept coming back to the same thought. How the hell did they know? The room in that video, it wasn't just similar to mine. It was mine. Every detail matched perfectly, down to the exact scuffs on my desk, and the way that other me smiled. It wasn't just creepy. It was like he knew something I didn't, like he was mocking me. By noon, I was pacing around the apartment, checking every door and window to make sure they were locked. I live alone, but that didn't make me feel any safer. If someone had been watching me through a hidden camera, how long had they been watching? Days? Weeks? Longer? I finally caved and put a sticky note over my laptop's webcam. Yeah, I know it's a little late for that, but it made me feel slightly less paranoid, at least for a little while. And then, things got worse. It started around 4 p.m. I was sitting at my desk, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, when I noticed something odd. The Wi-Fi on my laptop cut out for no reason. At first, I figured the router just glitched. It happens sometimes. But when I tried to reconnect, the network was gone, completely. Not just mine. Every network in the building was missing. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just nothing. Okay, weird, but not the end of the world. I figured I'd reset the router, but the moment I stood up, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Why did you stop watching? I swear to God, I felt my blood run cold. I stared at the message, my hand shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. I had never seen that number before in my life. There was no name, no profile photo, just those 5 words. I tried typing a reply, something along the lines of, "Who is this?" But before I could hit send, another message popped up. "You still have time. Midnight isn't far." My heart pounded against my ribcage. Midnight. The funeral. I blocked the number immediately and threw my phone onto the bed like it was radioactive. I was done with this. Done with the whole thing. I decided I'd drive to Zach's place and demand answers. Maybe he could explain everything. Maybe he thought it was hilarious, and this was all one big prank. But just as I grabbed my jacket, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't look, but I couldn't stop myself. It was another text. Same unknown number. Look outside. My stomach dropped. The windows in my apartment have thick blackout curtains, and I never leave them open. Ever. But now, standing in the middle of my room, I realized I could feel a draft coming from one of them. A cold breeze, like the window was cracked open. I slowly walked over to the curtain, my hands trembling as I reached for the edge. I pulled it back just enough to peek through. And that's when I saw it. There was someone standing on the sidewalk across the street. They were too far away for me to make out their face, but they were just standing there, completely still, looking up at my apartment. I dropped the curtain and stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it would say. See you soon. I tried to think logically. Maybe it was just some random person. Maybe I was freaking out over nothing. But the timing was too perfect. It wasn't just a coincidence. Someone was watching me. They knew where I lived. They knew what I had seen. And they weren't done with me yet. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of the apartment. I didn't care about my stuff. I just needed to get out of there. My plan was simple. Drive to Zach's, figure out what the hell was going on, and not come back until I had answers. But when I reached the parking lot, I stopped dead in my tracks. Every car in the lot was exactly where it should be. Every single one, except mine. My car was gone, and sitting in its place, taped to the asphalt, where the driver's side door should have been, was a single piece of paper. I bent down, hands shaking, and peeled it off the ground. Written in the same red font as the text from the video, it said, "Don't be late for your funeral." I was standing in that parking lot, gripping the piece of paper like it held all the answers, like if I stared at it long enough, the words would rearrange into something that made sense. But they didn't. Don't be late for your funeral. It felt like a threat, a warning, and somehow it felt personal. I spun around, scanning the lot, half expecting to see someone waiting for me in the shadows. But there was nothing, just rows of parked cars, their windows reflecting the dim light from the street lamps. It was quiet, too quiet, like the kind of silence you only notice when something is off. I reached for my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, but when I pulled it out of my pocket, the screen was frozen. The home button didn't work. Swiping did nothing. And then, as I stared at the unresponsive screen, it flickered, and a message popped up. "Your ride is waiting." My heart dropped into my stomach. My ride? That's when I noticed the black sedan parked near the lot's exit. It hadn't been there a second ago. The engine was running, headlights off, and I could just barely make out the shape of someone sitting in the driver's seat. They were slouched low, like they didn't want to be seen. I took a step back, panic clawing at the edges of my mind. There was no way I was getting in that car. No way. But as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Tick-tock. It felt like the walls of reality were closing in. I looked around, trying to come up with a plan, but my options were running out fast. My car was gone. My phone was basically a hostage. And now there was this strange car waiting for me, like it already knew what I was going to do. I should have run. I should have gone back inside, locked the doors, and waited it out until morning. But something deep inside told me that wasn't an option. This wasn't just some prank. This was a game, and I was already playing. I turned back toward the apartment building, figuring I could at least hide out in the stairwell while I figured out my next move. But when I reached the entrance, my key fob wouldn't work. I tried again. Nothing. And that's when I noticed the other tenants' names on the buzzer panel. All of them were gone, erased, like I was the only person who had ever lived there. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. It was like the world was unraveling around me, one thread at a time. I banged on the door, hoping someone inside might hear me, but the whole building felt deserted. I was completely, utterly alone, except for the car. It was still there, idling at the edge of the lot, waiting patiently like it knew I'd come crawling back. I was out of options. With a sick feeling in my gut, I took a deep breath and walked toward the sedan. The driver's window rolled down just an inch, just enough for me to hear the soft hum of the engine and the faint rustle of movement from inside. The passenger door unlocked with a loud click. I hesitated. Every instinct was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't think of anywhere to go. Every step I took felt like I was sinking deeper into some kind of nightmare, one where the rules of reality no longer applied. I pulled the door open. The interior was pitch black, so dark that I couldn't even see the driver's face, but I knew someone was there. I could feel their eyes on me, cold and unblinking, like they were waiting for me to mess up. I slid into the passenger seat, my heart hammering in my chest. The door slammed shut behind me with a heavy thud, and then the driver spoke. Right on time. The voice was strange, flat and emotionless, like it had been run through some kind of filter. I tried to see their face in the dim light, but it was shrouded in shadows. "Where are you taking me?" I whispered, my throat dry. The driver didn't answer. Instead, they reached into the center console and pulled out a small, rectangular device. It looked like one of those old-school GPS units, but the screen was cracked, and the casing was worn and scratched, like it had been used for years. The driver tapped the screen, and the GPS powered on with a soft chime. A single destination was already programmed into it. It read, "Home." I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Home. But the address listed wasn't my apartment. It was a cemetery. The sedan pulled out of the lot without another word, the tires crunching softly against the asphalt. I tried the door handle. Locked. Of course. The windows wouldn't roll down either. I was trapped. I sat back in my seat, my hands shaking. My brain was running in circles, trying to piece together what the hell was happening, but none of it made sense. The dark web video, the funeral, the texts. How was any of this even possible? And then, something even stranger happened. The GPS let out a soft beep, and a voice spoke from the speaker. Estimated time of arrival, 11:59 p.m. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. 11:59. That was 1 minute before midnight. The exact time the funeral was scheduled to start. I tried asking the driver again where they were taking me, but they didn't respond. They just kept driving, their hands steady on the wheel, the road stretching out endlessly in front of us. I glanced at the GPS again, hoping for some kind of clue, but the screen was blank now, just static, flickering faintly in the darkness. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was movement in the back seat. It was subtle at first, a shift in the shadows, a soft rustle of fabric, but it was enough to send every hair on my body standing on end. I slowly turned my head, heart hammering in my chest, and I saw it. Someone, or something, was sitting in the back seat. I couldn't make out their features, but I could feel their presence. They were leaning forward slightly, as if they were trying to stay hidden in the dark. And just like the figure in my closet, they weren't moving, just watching. The air in the car felt heavy, like it was pressing down on my lungs, making it hard to breathe. I kept my eyes on the figure in the back seat, praying that it wouldn't move, that it would stay perfectly still. And then it smiled. It was the same grin from the video, the same unsettling, too wide smile that felt like it was peeling reality apart at the seams. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, the driver spoke again, their voice flat and emotionless. Almost there. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 11:58 p.m. I felt trapped in a nightmare with no way out. The cemetery was waiting. Midnight was coming, and I had no idea what would happen when we arrived. But one thing was certain. I was about to find out. The air inside the sedan felt suffocating, like the darkness was pressing down on me, getting into my lungs, my brain, my thoughts. I kept my eyes locked on the figure in the back seat, trying not to blink, afraid that if I looked away for even a second, it might lunge at me. It just sat there, smiling that awful smile, its teeth glinting in the faint light from the dashboard. It wasn't just smiling, it was enjoying this, like it knew exactly what was coming. I checked the clock again. 11:59 p.m. We were almost there. The driver slowed the car as we pulled off the main road, the tires crunching against gravel. I could barely see anything outside, just the vague shapes of trees rushing past. And then, up ahead, a large wrought iron gate loomed into view. The cemetery. The gate creaked open on its own, as if it had been waiting for us. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. This wasn't a normal cemetery visit. I knew that much. Something about this place, something about tonight, felt wrong. Like the rules didn't apply here. The car crept through the gates, following a narrow path that twisted between rows of gravestones. My heartbeat thundered in my chest. I kept glancing between the driver and the thing in the back seat, but neither of them moved. And then the car stopped, right in front of a freshly dug grave. I sat there frozen, my hand hovering over the door handle. My mind was screaming at me to run, to do something, but my body wouldn't listen. It was like I was paralyzed by fear. The driver turned to me slowly, his face still hidden in shadow. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared, as if he was waiting for me to make the first move. And then, in that same flat, filtered voice, he said, "Get out." My hands trembled as I fumbled with the door handle. It unlocked with a soft click, and the cold night air rushed in, chilling me to the bone. I stumbled out of the car, my legs barely holding me up. The figure in the back seat didn't move. It just kept smiling, watching me with that awful grin, its eyes following me as I backed away from the sedan. I turned toward the grave. There it was, a simple wooden casket resting inside a pit of damp earth. No headstone, no flowers, just an open hole waiting to be filled. And that's when I saw the worst part. The casket was open, and inside it was me. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It was like looking into a nightmare version of a mirror. My own lifeless body, lying there, pale and still. Same clothes, same messy hair. Even the stupid little scar on my hand from that time. I tried to open a can with a knife. It was me. And I was dead. The driver stepped out of the car and walked over to the grave, moving with slow, deliberate steps. He stood at the edge of the pit, looking down at the casket, with an air of quiet satisfaction. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but my feet wouldn't move. My entire body felt locked in place, as if I was caught in some invisible web. And then the driver spoke again, It's time. Suddenly, the thing in the back seat climbed out of the car. It moved in that same eerie, deliberate way, like every step had been carefully choreographed in advance. It was still smiling, but now there was something worse in its expression, something that looked like hunger. It approached the grave slowly, never taking its eyes off me. And that's when I realized this wasn't just some random figure or hallucination. It was me, not a clone, not a twin. It was another version of me, the same way I had looked in that dark web video, grinning, knowing, waiting. And just like in the video, it smiled wider as it got closer. "Don't fight it," the other me whispered. Its voice was barely audible, like the sound of dead leaves scraping across pavement. "It's already done." The driver produced a small, black device from his pocket. It looked like an old-fashioned stopwatch. He clicked a button, and the device emitted a soft beep. The air around us shifted, like the world itself was holding its breath. I felt a strange heaviness settle over me, as if gravity had suddenly doubled. My legs buckled, and I collapsed to my knees beside the grave. I could feel the cold earth beneath my hands, damp and sticky, like it had been waiting for me. The other me crouched down beside me, still grinning. It leaned in close, so close that I could feel its breath on my skin. "You thought you could run," it whispered, "but you've already arrived." I tried to pull away, but it grabbed my wrist with an iron grip. Its touch was freezing, like sticking your hand in a bucket of ice water. And then, slowly, it began to pull me toward the casket. I fought with everything I had, kicking and thrashing, but it was no use. The other me was too strong, dragging me inch by inch toward the edge of the grave. I could hear the soft crunch of dirt beneath my shoes, feel the cold wind biting at my skin, and the worst part, I could see myself lying in that casket, waiting, my lifeless face, so peaceful, like I had already accepted whatever was happening. "No," I whispered, panic rising in my chest. "This can't be real. This can't." The other me leaned in, its grin stretching impossibly wide. "It's real," it whispered, "and it's already over." With one final yank, it pulled me to the edge of the grave. My legs dangled over the side, the damp earth crumbling beneath my weight. I tried to scramble backward, but the other me held me tight, its cold fingers digging into my skin. And then, it shoved me. I fell. The world tilted as I tumbled into the grave, landing with a hard thud inside the casket. The impact knocked the air out of my lungs, leaving me gasping and disoriented. The other me loomed above, peering down into the pit with that awful, twisted grin. And then the driver appeared beside it, holding a shovel. Without a word, he began to scoop dirt into the grave, each shovelful landing with a heavy thump against the casket lid. I screamed. I begged. I clawed at the sides of the casket, but the dirt kept coming, piling higher and higher, until all I could hear was the dull, suffocating sound of earth against wood. And then, silence. Total, absolute silence. For what felt like an eternity, I lay there in the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was wait. And just when I thought it was over, when I thought I had been buried alive, left to rot in the ground forever, something strange happened. The casket lid creaked open, and standing above me, staring down with that same twisted grin, was me. I don't know how long I lay in that casket, staring at the thing above me, but not me. It leaned over the open lid, grinning down into the pit, its eyes glowing with the same cold malice I had seen in the video. For a moment, neither of us moved. The night around us felt impossibly still, as if the entire world had stopped breathing. I tried to scramble out of the coffin, but my limbs felt sluggish, like I was moving through molasses, and the other me just kept grinning, its eyes glinting with something dark, something final. "You were never supposed to leave," it whispered, voice dripping with satisfaction. "But you had to look. You had to know." It reached down and grabbed my arm with that same freezing grip, its fingers curling around my wrist like a shackle. I thrashed against it, panic flooding my brain, but it didn't budge. Its grin widened as it leaned in closer, so close I could feel its breath, stale and cold, like earth and decay. "This is where you belong," it hissed. "Right here, where it ends." Then, with terrifying ease, it pulled me out of the casket and dragged me to my feet. The cemetery around us felt unreal, like a dream you can't wake up from, where everything looks familiar, but wrong in a way you can't explain. The trees loomed too tall, the sky was too black, and the air smelled faintly of wet dirt and copper. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The other me tightened its grip on my arm and began pulling me toward the grave. And that's when I realized what was happening. The casket. It wasn't for me. It was for him. This version of me, this twisted, grinning copy, wasn't here to bury me. It was here to take my place. I fought harder, kicking and twisting, but it was no use. Its grip was iron, and with every step, I felt myself growing weaker, like my strength was being drained out of me. "It's too late," the other me whispered. "You looked. That's all it takes." The words echoed in my mind, filling me with a deep, bone-chilling dread. I thought back to the warning on the video. "Do not share this. Do not look away." I had broken the rules, and now the rules were breaking me. The other me shoved me toward the casket, and I stumbled, falling to my knees beside the open grave. My hands sank into the cold dirt, and I could feel the weight of the earth pressing down on me, as if the cemetery itself was eager to swallow me whole. I turned to look at the driver, desperate for help, but he just stood there, shovel in hand, watching with cold indifference. It was like he had done this 1,000 times before. Like he knew exactly how this story ended. The other me crouched beside me, still grinning. It reached out and brushed a hand against my cheek, and the touch sent a wave of icy numbness through my body. "You can rest now," it whispered. "I'll take it from here." And then it did something I will never forget for as long as I live. It leaned in close and whispered my own name in my ear. The sound of my name, my real name, spoken in that awful, twisted voice, shattered something inside me. It was like hearing your own eulogy read aloud while you were still breathing. My vision blurred. My body felt heavy. And for a moment, I thought it was over, that I would collapse into the grave, swallowed by the dark, and disappear forever. But then, something changed. A flicker of defiance sparked in my chest. I wasn't ready to give in. Not like this. Not without a fight. With every ounce of strength I had left, I shoved the other me back, sending it stumbling toward the open casket. Its grin faltered for the first time. "No," it hissed, scrambling to regain its footing. "This isn't how it's supposed to go." But I didn't let it recover. I lunged forward, tackling it into the casket, and the moment its body hit the wooden bottom, the air shifted again, like the entire world was holding its breath. The driver, without hesitation, stepped forward and slammed the casket lid shut. The other me let out a scream, my scream, muffled and distant, as if it was coming from the other side of a wall. The sound sent chills down my spine, but I didn't stop. I grabbed the shovel from the driver's hand and began piling dirt on top of the casket, faster and faster, until the screams faded into silence. And then, it was over. I stood there, panting, my hands trembling around the handle of the shovel. The grave was filled. The other me was gone. The driver stood beside me, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, we just stood there in the silence of the cemetery, the night stretching on endlessly around us. Finally, he spoke. "You were lucky," he said in that flat, filtered voice. "Most aren't." I wanted to ask him what he meant, what the hell any of this was, but before I could say a word, he turned and walked back to the sedan. The car's engine rumbled to life, and just like that, he was gone. I stood alone in the cemetery, the cold wind biting at my skin, my mind racing. I kept expecting the world to shift again, for the ground to open up beneath me, but nothing happened. It was over, or so I thought. When I finally made it back to my apartment, everything looked exactly the same, except for one small, terrifying detail. The sticky note I had put over my laptop's webcam. It was gone. In its place, stuck neatly to the center of the screen, was a single slip of paper, written in the same red font as the texts and the note from the parking lot. It said, "See you next time." And below that, tomorrow's date. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. It wasn't over. It was never over. I accepted a job from the dark web. My first target was someone I know. Look, I'm not proud of what I did, but at the time, it felt like I didn't have much of a choice. Bills were stacking up, student loans weren't going away, and every dead-end job I tried either laid me off or paid me barely enough to survive. You know that 1 month from living on the street feeling. Yeah, that was me. Every day was a panic attack waiting to happen. It all started late one night when I was scrolling Reddit, half asleep, searching for some side hustle ideas. Ever heard that phrase about how desperation makes you do dumb things? Yeah, that. I saw someone post about dark web jobs in one of those shady financial subs. Most of the time, those threads get removed, or it's just trolls hyping it up. But this one seemed different. A bunch of people replied to the post, saying things like, "If you know where to look, you can make serious money. It's dangerous, but if you're careful, it works." I made more in a month than I did in a year of my old job. Now, I'm not an idiot. I knew the dark web was dangerous, but I figured it was mostly a lot of hype. I thought the stories were blown out of proportion, urban legends, or sensational YouTube clickbait. I mean, yeah, you hear about illegal stuff happening there, but people use Tor browsers to access it for other things too, right? I convinced myself it wasn't that bad. I was just curious. So, I downloaded Tor, found a couple of forums, and spent a few days poking around. I avoided anything that looked sketchy. No drugs, no trafficking. Most of the jobs I saw posted were weird, but not terrifying. Things like deliver a package, no questions asked, install a specific app on someone's phone, retrieve some info from a locked laptop. But then, after a couple days of lurking, I found a new thread in one of the marketplace sections. The job offer was different. The wording was vague, but specific. in a way that gave me chills. We need someone discreet, someone unnoticed. Task completion equals $5,000. Must follow instructions exactly. First task will determine further assignments. It felt strange, but the money made my heart race. $5,000 for one task. I knew it was probably dangerous, but it was $5,000. $5,000 that could save my life. I clicked the link. The interview. The link took me to a chat room. It didn't look high-tech or anything, just a basic text interface. There were no usernames, just a string of random numbers for my ID and a message waiting for me. If you're serious, say yes. If not, leave. There's no coming back from this. I stared at the screen for way too long, my finger hovering over the keyboard. I knew once I typed yes, that was it. No more browsing, no more lurking in the safety of anonymity. But the thought of $5,000 in my account by the end of the week, I typed yes and hit enter. A second message popped up immediately. You will receive your first task soon. Complete it without hesitation, and you will be rewarded. Failure has consequences. Confirm your willingness to proceed. Okay, yeah, it was creepy. Really creepy. But there was a part of me, this stupid, reckless part, that thought maybe it was just some guy trying to scare people off. Like those escape rooms that hype themselves up as the scariest thing you'll ever do, just to make it more thrilling. I mean, how bad could it be? I confirmed my willingness to proceed, and almost immediately another message appeared. Check your inbox, instructions sent. And just like that, the chat disconnected. The first assignment. When I checked my email, I found an anonymous message waiting for me. It was super simple. Target, John A. Address provided. Retrieve. External hard drive in the study. Reward. $5,000 upon completion. My heart skipped a beat. I knew that address. It belonged to John, my neighbor. He lived in the apartment 2 floors down from mine. We weren't super close or anything, but we'd run into each other a few times in the hallway, shared the occasional awkward elevator ride. And now, someone wanted me to break into his apartment and steal an external hard drive. I thought about backing out. I mean, seriously, how much trouble could I get in for something like this? But at the same time, John wasn't home. I knew his schedule. He worked the night shift at some tech company, and tonight was one of his shifts. It wouldn't take long. In and out. $5,000. Just like that. A bad omen. I put on a hoodie, gloves, and slipped on some sneakers. Nothing too flashy, just enough to blend in. I grabbed a backpack and took the stairs down to John's floor, trying to act casual. As I approached his door, my stomach twisted in knots. The building was silent, the kind of silence that feels too quiet, if that makes sense. Like the air was holding its breath. I reached into my backpack, pulled out a small set of lockpicks, something I'd ordered off Amazon months ago, just as a dumb impulse buy. I mean, who actually expects to use those things in real life, right? But there I was, crouched in front of John's door, praying that the stupid YouTube tutorials I'd watched would pay off. After what felt like an eternity, the lock gave a soft click. The door swung open, just a crack, and that's when I noticed it. The door hadn't been locked properly. I froze. Something about that felt wrong. John was always paranoid about locking his door. He'd once lectured me for leaving mine unlocked by accident. So why was his door open? A part of me wanted to turn around and walk away. But the other part, the desperate part, told me to keep going. I mean, maybe he was just in a rush. maybe he forgot this one time. I slipped inside, careful not to make a sound. Inside the apartment, John's apartment was dark. Not pitch black, but dim enough that I had to squint to make out shapes in the room. The air smelled strange. Not bad exactly, but kind of stale, like someone had left food out too long or hadn't opened a window in a while. I made my way through the living room, stepping carefully to avoid bumping into anything. Every little noise felt like a gunshot. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might explode. The study was at the end of the hallway. When I reached the door, I paused, listening for any sound. Nothing. Just the low hum of the fridge somewhere in the background. I turned the handle slowly and pushed the door open. The study was small and cramped, filled with bookshelves and a cluttered desk. And right there, sitting on the desk next to a laptop, was the external hard drive. Easy. Too easy. I grabbed the hard drive, slipped it into my backpack, and turned to leave. But just as I was about to step out of the room, something caught my eye. Something on the laptop screen. The screen was on, the display glowing faintly in the darkness. And there, in the center of the screen, was a message. "We know you're here." I swear my heart stopped the second I saw that message. "We know you're here." It felt like a punch in the gut. My hands went cold. My brain scrambled to make sense of it. How? How could they know? Was this some kind of security system? A prank? Or worse? Was John still here, watching me from somewhere in the apartment? I spun around, scanning the room, half expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. But there was no movement, just that eerie stillness, thick and suffocating. The study was empty. So was the hallway. I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was just an auto-generated message, like a screensaver or something. I mean, it had to be a coincidence, right? But something about the wording didn't sit right. It wasn't generic. It felt personal, too specific. I should have just left right then. I had what I came for. The hard drive was in my bag, and I could have slipped out and been done with it. But instead, I did something stupid. I stepped closer to the laptop. Something isn't right. The screen flickered slightly as I approached, and the message changed right in front of me. "You shouldn't have come here." My stomach dropped. This wasn't random. Someone was messing with me. I hesitated for a second, but curiosity, or maybe just fear, got the better of me. I moved the mouse, and the screen woke up fully. The desktop was cluttered with open files, documents, PDFs, a couple of video thumbnails. But what stood out most was the browser window in the corner. The browser was still running in the background. It was some deep web page, nothing I recognized, and it looked like John had been in a chat room, the same kind of chat room I found that job listing on. At the top of the window, there was an ongoing chat. Anonymous. "He's in your apartment. Target confirmed. Unknown. He has the hard drive. Do it now." My breath hitched. They were talking about me. Fight or flight. I felt like I'd been dumped in ice water. My brain was screaming at me to leave, to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. I forced myself to look away from the screen and toward the door. Every instinct in my body was telling me something wasn't right. Something way worse than just a break-in gone wrong. And then I heard it. A faint click. It was the sound of a door closing. Soft, deliberate, like someone had just shut the front door very carefully. I nearly dropped my bag. Someone was in the apartment. Panic surged through me, and I bolted for the hallway, trying to keep my footsteps light. My heart was hammering in my chest, every nerve on fire. I knew I had to get out. Now. But as I made my way down the hall, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The front door, the one I had just come through, was locked. The bathroom door. I was frozen for what felt like an eternity, staring at that door, trying to process what the hell was happening. I knew I hadn't locked it when I came in, but there it was. Deadbolt turned, chain latched. There was no way out, and that's when I heard another sound. This one closer. It came from behind me, toward the far end of the hallway. It was soft, like the shuffle of a footstep, or someone adjusting their weight. The bathroom door. It was cracked open, just a sliver of darkness spilling into the hallway. It hadn't been open when I walked in. I felt like I was going to throw up. There was no way someone could have snuck past me without me noticing. But the door was open now. Someone, or something, was behind it. I could feel it in my bones. I backed away, keeping my eyes locked on that thin gap in the door. My hands were shaking so bad I thought I might drop the backpack. I had to think fast. If I ran for the front door, I'd make too much noise. If whoever, or whatever, was in the bathroom heard me, I was screwed. Then I remembered. John's apartment had a fire escape. It was connected to a window in the living room. If I could make it there, I might still have a chance. The escape plan. I forced myself to move, inching toward the living room. Every step felt like walking through quicksand, agonizingly slow. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting that bathroom door to swing open at any second. When I reached the living room, I saw the window, the fire escape just beyond it. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The window was locked, and the latch was rusted shut. I yanked on it as quietly as I could, but it wouldn't budge. I tried not to panic. I could still make this work. I just needed a tool, something to pry the window open. That's when I noticed something else. Sitting on the coffee table, right in the center of the room, was a phone. John's phone, and the screen was on. A message notification had popped up, bright against the darkness. I leaned in closer, heart pounding in my ears. The message was from a contact labeled unknown. It read, "We're watching you." And right as I read that, the phone started vibrating. Someone was calling. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. The name on the screen wasn't unknown anymore. It was my name. Out of time. That was it. I couldn't stay here any longer. I grabbed a nearby lamp, smashed the window as quietly as I could, and shoved it open. Glass scattered across the floor, but I didn't care. I was out of options. I threw my backpack through the window and climbed out onto the fire escape, heart racing. My hands were slick with sweat, and I fumbled with the ladder, trying to get it down without making too much noise. Just as I got the ladder lowered, I heard it, something heavy shifting behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked, I knew I wouldn't make it. I scrambled down the ladder, nearly slipping on the last few rungs, and hit the pavement below. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to keep moving, sprinting down the alley until my lungs burned. I didn't stop running until I was a few blocks away, panting and shaking, adrenaline still coursing through me. When I finally had the nerve to check my bag, I pulled out the hard drive. It was heavier than I expected, sleek, black, and cold to the touch. But as I stared at it, something horrifying dawned on me. The hard drive was already warm when I picked it up. I stood there on the street, chest heaving, the cold night air biting at my skin. My heart was still racing, but I couldn't take my eyes off the hard drive. The thought kept circling in my mind, over and over. The hard drive was warm, which meant someone else had touched it before me, recently. That feeling, the one where every inch of your body tells you something is very, very wrong, hit me hard. My hands were still trembling as I zipped the backpack shut, like sealing it away might make it all stop. Spoiler, it didn't. The streets were quiet, too quiet, the way they get in the dead of night when it feels like the entire world has shut off and you're the last person alive. I needed to get home. I needed to figure out what the hell I had just stolen and who was watching me. I took the long way back to my building just in case. I ducked through side streets, kept my hood low, and checked over my shoulder every other step. Paranoia was eating away at me, and I swear I could feel eyes on me. But whenever I looked, the street was empty. When I finally reached my apartment door, I fumbled with the keys, desperate to get inside. The second I stepped through, I locked the door behind me. Bolt, chain, everything. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood, breathing hard, trying to calm myself down. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. Something I didn't see. I pulled the hard drive out of my bag and set it on my kitchen counter, just staring at it like it was some kind of cursed artifact. For a moment, I thought about smashing it, just tossing it out the window or breaking it into a million pieces, but that wouldn't help. If someone had gone through all the trouble to set me up for this, they wouldn't just let me off the hook. I grabbed my laptop and plugged the hard drive in. The whir of the drive spinning up sounded like a tiny engine revving, and the icon popped up on my screen almost immediately. There was just one folder. No name, just a blank icon, like it hadn't been labeled properly, or like someone didn't want it to be found easily. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of video files. All of them were just random strings of numbers as file names. No context, no dates, nothing to explain what they were. I hovered over the first one, feeling my skin crawl. The timestamp said it was only a few minutes long. I clicked play. The video started off with shaky, low-quality footage, the kind you'd expect from an old security camera or someone's webcam. The angle was strange, like the camera was hidden on a shelf or tucked behind something. And then I recognized what I was looking at. It was the hallway outside my apartment. The video was grainy, but I could make out enough. It showed me stepping out of my apartment earlier that night, wearing the same hoodie I had on now. The timestamp in the corner matched exactly when I had left to break into John's place. I felt my stomach twist. Someone had been watching me, filming me. I scrubbed forward in the video, hoping it would just end, but it didn't. A few minutes later, after I left, someone else appeared on the screen. It was a man, tall, wearing a black coat and gloves, his face hidden in the shadow of a baseball cap. He stood in front of my door for a long time, not moving, just staring at it. Then slowly, he reached up and slid a piece of paper under the door. I didn't wait for the video to finish. I shot up from my chair and sprinted to my front door, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. There it was, a piece of folded paper tucked neatly under the doorframe. My hand shook as I picked it up and unfolded it. We're not done. A bad decision. I stumbled back, the words swimming in my head like poison. This wasn't just about the hard drive. I had walked straight into something much worse, and now there was no way out. I wanted to throw the paper away, delete the files, act like none of this was happening. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever these people were, they already knew everything about me. Running wouldn't help. Smashing the hard drive wouldn't help. I had to know more. I went back to my laptop, clicked on the next video, and hit play. This one was different. It wasn't a security feed. It looked like it had been recorded on a phone, shaky, close up, and way too personal. The camera was pointed at a man sitting in a chair, hands tied behind his back. His head was slumped forward, like he was unconscious, and there was a piece of duct tape over his mouth. I leaned closer to the screen, and that's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. The man in the chair was John's fate. My brain short-circuited. What the hell was going on? John wasn't supposed to be home. He was supposed to be at work. But there he was, tied to a chair in some dingy, windowless room, looking like he'd been there for hours. The camera zoomed in on John's face, and suddenly, he jerked awake, his eyes wide with panic. He tried to scream, but the duct tape muffled the sound. The camera shifted, panning slowly to the side, and that's when I saw it. A hand. Someone holding a phone in their gloved hand, typing a message. The phone screen lit up, and I could see the text being sent in real time. Target confirmed. Proceed. I felt like I was going to be sick. The message had been sent to the same chat I saw on John's laptop, the one about me. The video ended with the camera turning back to John. He was thrashing in the chair, wild-eyed, as the person behind the camera leaned in close and whispered something to him. Something I couldn't hear. And then the screen went black. The realization. I sat there in stunned silence, my mind spinning. This wasn't just a job. I'd been dragged into something far worse, something I didn't understand. John wasn't the target. I was. The whole thing had been a setup from the start. They'd lured me in with the promise of easy money, made me steal the hard drive to implicate myself, and now they had me exactly where they wanted. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't over, not even close. As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the counter. I jumped, nearly knocking over my laptop. When I picked up the phone, my blood ran cold. It was a message from an unknown number. It's your turn now. Instructions coming soon. I stared at my phone, the message glowing back at me like a bad omen. It's your turn now. Instructions coming soon. I could feel my pulse in my ears, the walls of my apartment closing in on me. I knew I had to get out of the building, out of this nightmare. But where the hell could I go? Whoever these people were, they already knew everything about me. They had cameras, phones, chats. I didn't understand. If I tried to run, they'd find me. I thought about calling the police for half a second, but I knew that wasn't going to work. What would I even say? That I took a job off the dark web to steal a hard drive from my neighbor, and now I was being hunted by some faceless group. They'd arrest me on the spot and leave the real monsters out there, waiting. Number, I had to think. Fast. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. The timer. I braced myself before looking at the screen. When I finally did, my stomach flipped. You have 60 minutes. Below the text, a countdown timer had started, ticking down by the second. 59, 57, 59, 56, 59, 55. The message didn't say what would happen when the time ran out, but I didn't need to be told. Whatever they were planning, I wasn't going to stick around to find out. I shoved the hard drive back into my bag, grabbed my jacket, and bolted for the door. I didn't even bother checking the peephole. I just unlocked the deadbolt, slid the chain off, and stepped out into the hallway. And that's when I stopped cold. Someone had taped a small envelope to the outside of my door. My name was scrawled across the front in black ink, shaky and uneven, like it had been written in a hurry. I knew I shouldn't open it, but my hands moved on their own. I tore the envelope open and pulled out a single piece of paper. 4 words. We are watching. Always. Nowhere to run. I couldn't take it anymore. I sprinted down the hallway, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I didn't care if I made noise. I just needed to get the hell out of there. The stairwell felt endless, the sound of my footsteps bouncing off the walls like something was chasing me. My mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them helpful. I tried to think of somewhere, anywhere, I could go, but everywhere I thought of felt too obvious, too exposed. When I reached the ground floor, I burst through the exit door and into the cold night air. My breath hit the air in sharp clouds as I pulled my hood tighter and scanned the empty street. No one. The city felt abandoned, like I'd slipped into a version of reality where everyone else had vanished. The streetlights flickered above me, casting long, shaky shadows that made my skin crawl. I knew staying out here wasn't an option. If they had eyes on me, it wouldn't take them long to catch up. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere off the grid, at least for the night. And that's when it hit me. The storage units. The storage unit. There was a 24-hour storage facility a few blocks away. I had rented a unit there a while back to stash some junk I didn't want cluttering up my apartment. I knew the place well enough to know that no one would be there this late. It was quiet, and most importantly, it was off camera. No surveillance. I kept my head low as I made my way through the side streets, checking over my shoulder every few steps. The countdown on my phone was still ticking down, second by second, every vibration a reminder that time was running out. 48:22, 48:21. When I reached the storage facility, the gate was already open. That was strange. Normally you had to punch in a code to get through the entrance, but I didn't have time to question it. I slipped inside and made my way toward my unit at the back of the lot. The rows of metal doors stretched out like a maze, the cold metal of the lock in my hands feeling like the only real thing left in the world. I unlocked the door, slid it open, and stepped inside. Though warning, the second I shut the door behind me, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I knew I had to. The message was short. Stop hiding. It won't help. The air in the storage unit felt heavy, pressing down on my chest. How the hell did they know? How could they know where I was already? I paced back and forth in the cramped space, trying to think, trying to breathe. My thoughts were spiraling, tangling together in a mess of fear and adrenaline. I pulled the hard drive out of my bag, staring at it like it held some kind of answer. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small sticker on the back of the hard drive. It was nearly invisible, blending in with the black casing. But when I looked closer, I saw it. A tracking chip. They had been following me the whole time. The final stretch. I ripped the chip off the hard drive and stomped on it, grinding it into the concrete floor beneath my heel. But I knew it was too late. They already knew where I was. The countdown on my phone kept ticking, faster and faster in my mind, even though the seconds stayed the same. 32:15, 32:14. My pulse was a drum in my ears as I tried to think of my next move. But the fear was too much. It clouded everything. I felt trapped, like a rat in a maze with no way out. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow deliberate footsteps outside the storage unit door. The knock. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. The footsteps stopped just on the other side of the metal door. For a moment, there was only silence. Thick, suffocating silence. And then, a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I clamped my hand over my mouth, trying not to breathe, trying not to make a sound. My heart was hammering so loud, I was sure they could hear it through the door. Another knock. This one louder, more forceful. I backed away slowly, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the hard drive like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Then came the voice, low, calm, and almost friendly. "We just want to talk." I stayed against the wall, my whole body trembling as the voice drifted through the door. "Come on, we know you're in there." The way the words rolled out, calm, patient, made my skin crawl. There was no anger, no frustration, just cold certainty, like they already knew how this was going to end. I tried to think, tried to come up with a way out, but my mind was blank. I kept staring at the door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. Another knock. This one was different, slow, deliberate, like whoever was outside was savoring the sound. Then the voice came again, just as calm as before. "It's almost time. You don't want to be late." The final message, the timer on my phone, was still counting down, ticking away the last moments of my sanity. 1912. 1911. I clenched my jaw, every part of me screaming to stay silent, not to move. But then my phone buzzed again, a new message lighting up the screen. This one was a video. I didn't want to watch it. I knew deep down that whatever was in that video would only make things worse. But I tapped it anyway, because what else could I do? The screen filled with shaky footage. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. It was my storage unit, the exact one I was hiding in, filmed from outside the door. I could see myself, pressed against the back wall, clutching the hard drive in one hand and my phone in the other. The video was being streamed in real time, and then, from behind the camera, a hand reached toward the storage unit door. The video cut off just as the lock began to rattle. The open door, the silence that followed, was unbearable. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my skull. The seconds felt like hours, and all I could do was stare at the door, waiting for it to open. The rattle from the video echoed in real life, soft at first, then louder as the lock twisted. I held my breath, squeezing my eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable. And then, the door slid open, but there was no one there, just the empty lot outside, bathed in the cold glow of flickering streetlights. I stepped forward, my legs weak and unsteady, and peered out into the night. There was no sign of anyone, no footsteps, no shadows, just nothing. But when I looked down, I saw something new, a small package placed neatly at the threshold. My name was written on it, in the same messy handwriting as the note from earlier. The package. Every part of me was screaming not to touch it, to just leave it there and walk away. But it was too late for that. I knew that if I left it unopened, it wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop. I crouched down, hands shaking, and carefully opened the package. Inside was a small phone, an old flip phone, the kind you don't see anymore. The screen lit up as soon as I touched it, and there was one new message waiting for me. "Turn around." Face to face. I froze. My blood turned to ice. I didn't want to look. I knew that whatever was behind me wasn't going to be good, but something compelled me to do it. Slowly, painfully, I turned around, and there he was, John. He was standing in the middle of the storage unit, just a few feet away from me. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, his face pale as a corpse. He looked wrong, like a puppet whose strings were being yanked by someone else. He opened his mouth to speak, but the sound that came out wasn't human. It was a distorted, garbled mess, like audio played in reverse, twisted and broken. Then, all at once, his body jerked violently, as if something inside him was pulling the strings tighter. His eyes locked onto mine, and in a voice that wasn't his, he whispered, "You're next." The truth. The flip phone in my hand buzzed again. Another message. "You've passed the first test. Final instructions will follow." My mind fractured in that moment, splitting between fear, disbelief, and the horrifying realization that I had been part of something much bigger, something I didn't understand and never could. John's body twisted unnaturally, his limbs bending in ways that made my stomach churn. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he collapsed, his body hitting the concrete floor with a sickening thud. And I knew that whatever John had been was gone now. The last step. I staggered out of the storage unit, gasping for air, the flip phone clutched tight in my hand. The countdown on my original phone hit 0, but nothing happened. No explosion, no alarm, just silence. Then a final message appeared on the screen of the flip phone. "Welcome. Your first task begins now." The screen went dark, and in that moment, I understood. I wasn't the target. I was the replacement. Whatever I had walked into that night, whatever twisted game I had agreed to, I wasn't getting out. Not now. Not ever. They had chosen me. And soon, I would have to choose someone else.